There I am. Hello. Hello. If you are live, with me, my co-host will be here momentarily. As a matter of fact, here's one. And
Hey.
here in a second, I think. I don't know about you, but I cut it down to the wire.
Yeah. Oh, I read the book early. It was like getting ready for
Right.
this. It was like...
No. First of all, I'm in my pajamas. Second of all, my husband sleeps in on Saturdays, understandable, and I was editing a video, which I edit on my phone, and I can't see the time on my phone in the iMovie app, right? So I'm just editing away, waiting for him to wake up, yada, yada, yada. And it was well after 11 when I finished editing the video and realized what time it was. Like, uh-oh, because, like, on Saturdays, I usually make a big breakfast, which I do once my husband's awake. So I'd been telling my kids, yeah, you can have a snack, but we'll have breakfast when dad's awake and stuff. And then, yeah, 1 minute ago, I was stuffing my face watching the countdown in 40 seconds.
Yeah, we were like cleaning the house because someone's having a friend over. And so I was like, I have to get dressed.
Right. Well, you beat me. I didn't get dressed. I did put a bra on. I was like, that's
It works.
what the public gets today. But it's fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, Robin should be here momentarily. So yeah, we're there. Okay.
Cool.
So I know you have reread it, like I have reread it. What do you
Yeah.
think of it the second go around?
I still think it's really good.
Right.
I love it. I think it's a great conclusion. And it
Right.
feels more like a conclusion than the last book did.
Yes. I feel like often the final book is one of my least favorites because you're always so focused on tying up the plot and the final conflict, and it's less character moments. I feel like in almost every series, the final book has less character moments than the rest of the series, and that's, kind of where I thrive.
Yeah.
But it is still there, it is still present in this book, and I think that our narrator being the person who is, writing the history and the life of the great king
Mm.
kind of makes sense for where our focus was on, the battles and all
Yeah.
more so.
Well, I also feel like it kind of gives us more of a conclusion. Like even though, we're not in the perspective of Eugenides, I feel like this is still giving us closure on
Mhm.
his life, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we see like it's like a pivotal changing moment for him,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and I do like that, you do get some thief moments in this book. I think that we wanted that before the series ended,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I really like that.
Yeah. And then, like it ends with him having kids.
Yeah.
And sort of like, and I mean, she could write more in this world. I would read more in this world.
Right.
But it does feel like we're sort of like wrapping up, at least for Eugenides. Hey.
Yes. Agree. Did you finish the book, Robin?
I did.
Look at you. Look at you go.
Said I would.
You said you would, and I believed you the whole time.
The whole time. For sure. Didn't doubt me for a second.
Robin, what do you think?
I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a very good ending. It definitely wrapped everything up. Sorry, my computer is dying. Like you said, it's a very satisfying ending, but it doesn't end in a way that felt too clean. I did not read the little thing at the end.
It's worth reading.
Is
Yeah.
it with that's I didn't get to that part yet, but
Mhm.
um I also really liked how much the gods were involved in this one,
Mhm.
because I feel like we got like little peeks at them in the previous books, and in this one, I feel like they actually had like a lot more
Mhm.
involvement. Um, I was leery about the narrator at first, but
Mhm.
I did think it was fun the way that, like, the whole time I was like, "Is he the thief or is Eugenides the thief?" Because he could sneak around the way that Eugenides.
Right.
So that was like at first I was like, "Is that the twist? Is he the new thief?" Like,
Right.
Right.
I think that it's an interesting look, without almost a confrontational look, right, at
mhm,
how society and people in general treat obviously disabled people
yeah,
and how they really don't view them as whole people, or they just kind of, I don't know, they'll do
see
anything in
nothing
front of them
bad.
because they're not real,
Right.
Yeah,
they're not whole, and, I know I follow Imani Barbarin, Crutches and Spice.
yeah,
I watch her TikToks, like, on the daily, basically, and she has mentioned quite a bit how, like, the CIA has actively recruited disabled people because people
they
don't view them as a threat. They
yeah,
will, reveal secrets in front of them. Like, really,
mhm,
the ableism in our day-to-day life,
Uh,
just ignoring all of the, systemic stuff, just your
yeah.
own personal bias a lot of times.
You assume they can't do anything, so you
Yeah.
just pretend
yeah.
like they're not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they are invisible in a lot of
Yeah,
ways,
and so I
unless
really
you're
liked yeah,
yeah, and even, like, what's his name? Ferris?
Mhm.
yeah,
Um, the only time he was visible was when people were treating him as a sign of bad luck, right?
yeah,
Like, in a lot of ways, and, The Maid and the Crocodile by Jordan Ifueko, um, deals in that as well, like,
I
really heavily because
yeah,
the main character is also physically disabled
mhm,
and, just both it's 2 different societies, but it's kinda the same thing, and they're obviously both based on our reality, so I do find that to be a very
yeah,
interesting and, like I said, confrontational. I feel like starting this book, if didn't already have a lot of trust in the author, I would be very nervous about
yeah,
the way that they're talking about the, narrator, but to me, again, it's like, that is how people treat disabled people without polishing it up or cleaning it up.
Yeah.
yeah,
That is
and
reality.
and I think the book as a whole did a good job of, like, as the characters are talking about the narrator is, like, as he's doing stuff, like, proving that, like, "No, I am a full human being, I
Mhm.
am perfectly capable, I
Mhm.
use, all of these things that people think about me,
Right.
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
my life."
And I think that's interesting too, is like using assumptions for his own benefit is something that he kind of does,
Yeah,
which I mean, to be fair, Eugenides has always done a lot of stuff too, so he feels like a good kind of like almost like a
Right.
mirror to a certain
yeah,
extent. And I
Right.
think that's part of what's interesting, right? Is like Eugenides sees him and gets him
yeah,
in a way that other people kind of don't because they are similar in some
yeah, yeah,
Right. And I think it fits, one, because that is one of Eugenides' real strengths is that he sees people for themselves rather than their place.
ways.
yeah,
And also, like you said, from the very book, it's been, if you just let people assume that what they want to believe is correct, it's
Mhm.
easy to work around that, work right in front of their eyes, and they won't believe
yeah.
that that's what they're saying,
Yeah.
right?
And I also like that it was very clear that, like, his actions, like, the way that Ferris, right? I can't remember.
Mhm.
Like, it wasn't a malicious thing that he did. It was a survival thing.
Yeah.
And as he got older, he was like, well, I can use this as a way to, be be a person and live my life without getting attacked or anything like that. And then it was later on that he was like, oh, I might be able to be helpful now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And um it kind of is that just kind of universal principle, I guess, especially when it comes to anybody, honestly. But a lot of times you can only do or be what people are willing to allow you to attempt or allow you in the space of, right? Um whether that's class or disability or race or what have you. It's not that only one group of people is capable, is that they are the ones literally allowed in the door. And I think that with Ferris, he always had the ability, and so did his older brother that's mentioned later on in the book. They always had the ability to be a valuable part of their family and their society, in that they were um I don't know what word I want, but, like, they always mattered, right? It was just the people around them, um, deciding where they belonged or what their place was, or
Yeah.
whether they were gonna be allowed out of the house or allowed even in with the family. And
Yeah.
so the only thing that really changed for Ferris was his, environment, right? And obviously he also grew older and matured, but it was the people around him that were the
Yeah.
factors.
And you really got to see that when he finds the earrings for Jen, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden everyone's like, "Oh, you are" and
Right.
then, like, suddenly everyone, like, started treating him like an actual human being instead of
Yeah. And even how Eugenides was, trying to protect him in the court, and, um, how Aurelius reminded him that if he's going around writing in his notebook, then people are going to remember that
Yeah,
he thinks.
Yeah.
yeah. You
No,
want to
that's
stay
not really a
invisible.
safe thing for him at the
It's
moment.
really interesting. Yeah. It reminds me of, I read this book a couple years ago that was like this YA memoir, by this woman who's autistic and nonverbal, and
Mhm.
like talking about her coming of age and like people thinking she couldn't communicate, and like eventually people realizing like she had this rich inner life and needed someone to figure out how she could communicate even though she couldn't
Yeah,
speak. And so it
Mhm.
like just it was interesting, like there I see a lot of similarities.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I have a feeling that there's a lot of there's a lot of that amongst a lot of different disabilities, whether it's,
Mhm.
being nonverbal or deaf or whatever it might be, where people just assume like, "Oh, you don't function like a normal human being
Right.
now." Whereas in
Mhm.
reality, it's like they have skills that
Mhm.
you don't now because,
Right.
you know,
Right.
so
And additionally, people are valuable because they're people. It doesn't
yeah.
matter whether they are a productive part of society, or that, like, that's capitalism. That's
Oh, yeah,
eugenics. That's not good. It's not
exactly.
that, but
What
it is
I
what people believe.
Yeah, that
Um,
what I provide to you is what makes me worthy, not that
right,
Right.
I am a person.
right. So I like that Ferris, you know, did end up becoming a scholar and a scribe. Like, I like all that, but obviously, like, we're not saying that that was the only thing that made him
Yeah,
No.
yeah, exactly. It's not that, he had to earn his right to be
this
that.
person.
Yeah.
Him wanting
Right.
it was enough, like
I
Right.
do feel like for a book written for, young teens and stuff, something like this is so valuable though,
oh,
too,
yeah,
of like getting a picture of like, oh, maybe people are more than what I think that they are, and, like,
For sure.
don't make assumptions. I like that.
Yeah, I did really appreciate, like, there was a lot of just, like, little things that she threw in too, where, what was it, like, Relius is talking about, like, his love, and they were like, whether he or she is blah, 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 and I was like, I like these just there was no, like it didn't hang on it, it was just very casually in there, and I was like, I think making it feel so normal
Mhm.
in
Right.
a book like this is really something special that you don't always get to see just
Right.
normalized completely.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this is true too, that education is valuable, but also
Right.
that, like, people are gonna learn in different ways, and so part of it is, like,
Mhm.
which I think you see with Ferris too, that it's,
Yeah.
like, having somebody who can be patient enough to figure out, like, okay, what actually works for learning for this person.
Right.
And especially with, like, the US education where you are expected to learn everyone's expected to learn at like,
Right.
this one way, and
Mhm.
for the students that that doesn't serve, those kids are made to feel like something is wrong with them, when in reality, it's like, that's the education system, you just learn in a different way,
Yeah.
Right.
and seeing that, like, you are a worthy, intelligent human being, and this system just isn't serving you.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I think that this book being split into 2 different parts also made a lot of sense,
Mhm.
um, because, again, we're once again entering a book with an introduction to a new character that we really don't know. We don't know why we should care about him, although I think he says right at the beginning about how he is writing the true history of the great king, and it doesn't
Yeah,
and he was there, and it doesn't need to be embellished like it often is because the reality is impressive enough.
yeah.
Um, but I think it's kind of I don't know. I liked that Arondides ended up, I don't know, as a trusted companion of the king and as someone that he valued.
Mhm.
I think that was neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that you spend so much of the book, like, wondering who you can trust outside of your, like, core characters. It's like,
Right.
which of these like, who is the traitors and who is, because
Yeah.
everyone's swearing fealty to everyone else, and it's like, who can you really trust?
Yeah.
And so I
I
did like
think
that they played with that a lot.
Mhm.
I think it's also kinda satisfying, right, that his grandfather's ploy backfired so
Oh, yeah. So
dramatically.
bad.
Yeah.
Like, when the tent, like, burns, I was just like, "Oh, dang."
Yeah, there were a few different things. The scene where the ambassador kisses the queen, the
Mhm.
scene where the barons try to force Eugenides to be there
Yeah.
at their
And
beck
he's
and
just like,
call.
"Forget it.
"Alright, bye."
I'm out."
Right. And then the scene where he's with the Medes and you get to see, again, what he can single-handedly kind of do. And then after that, like you said, Robin, about the gods being so present,
Yeah.
literally the lightning striking because
Boom. And he's
and I
like,
just like I
"Mic
like
drop."
that I like that Eugenides is not doesn't have magic, he doesn't have powers,
Yeah,
everything is really at the whim of his gods, right?
yeah,
He can't call it forth unless they want to make something happen, and
Mhm.
even after, it
and
is
the
when he comes back from the Medes. I
yeah,
don't know if you guys caught this, but when Edis and Atolia are talking to each other, and Atolia's kind of freaking out because Eugenides is not just Jen, he's Eugenides, his god, like, he's
yeah,
kind of like a
Yeah.
avatar at the moment.
Mhm.
I just think that, like, those were scenes that, like, really broke up kind of the monotony of, "And we're trying to survive an
yeah.
ancient
I
illusion that we."
liked the little moments with his dad too, like, not just, like, the scene where they're fighting, but, like, after the tent is, like
Mhm.
and he, like, goes to his father, and,
Mhm.
like, they mentioned, like, oh, his father could feel him shaking or whatever, and I was like, it
Mhm.
really, like, makes him feel human and reminds you that, like, he is not magical.
Mhm.
He is not the gods. He is equally as stunned sometimes by
Right. And he's
their
always been
loyalty to
freaked
him.
out by the god's attention. It's
Yeah,
not really a thing he's actively wanted.
yeah,
Yeah. I think it's interesting too that we get kind of this information about how in their culture, right, like they'd normally get tattoos when they first kill somebody, and that the thief is always sort of on the outside of those communal practices so
yeah.
Right,
that they can't take too much power. I thought that was
right.
Mhm.
I thought all the little tidbits that we got about the thieves was fascinating. That the fact that the whole reason why this series started with his original quest was because I think we got to see a lot more of the Adesians not being um and more aspirational court than Sunis
Yeah,
and
Mhm.
Julia because they were going to kill
kill him.
him because they were
They were
so
like, "He's
threatened
too
by
powerful."
him.
Yeah,
And the thieves and there's always been the history of the thieves, right? But the thieves cannot overstep. There are checks and balances,
Right.
and they definitely thought that he would. But again, things worked out, I guess, because of the gods and
yeah,
because of the love and support system that he had. It wasn't just him being and I think too, like you were saying about, his dad comforting him, I think a lot of times in these types of books, we only see that glimpse of humanity of our main character once they've grown to their full power and yada, yada, yada.
yeah,
We only see that with, like, their love interest.
Mhm.
Her love interest is the only one that still sees them
yeah,
as a person, and I like that that's not true.
No, yeah.
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 Yeah, you have his father, you have his friendships, you have, like, it really kind of hit all those different
Mhm.
relationships.
And also the fact that we saw too that Eugenides had killed the cousin or whatever that that had offended the gods, that had attacked him to the point that was no longer permissible, and
Yeah,
that his grandfather that was the thief, um, made him do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting too. There's a lot of like, I know you said you didn't read the story at the end, but so I
Yeah,
won't go into too much detail, but like there's there's kind of this like these cycles that seem to
mhm,
happen,
yeah,
where it's like reality is mirroring mythology kind of
mhm,
in the conversation with each other. I think that's kind of cool.
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I think you'll like it because you said about, liking that the gods were more involved, and
yeah,
Yeah.
it's N it's not just the mythology that's kind of been missing from this book because every other book we've had, little
yeah,
tiny myths and stuff. So that's in the short story, but you also see Jen in it,
Yeah.
so
oh,
it's
okay,
definitely good
That's
reading.
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah.
I
That was
also liked that the war felt like the battle, it wasn't like everyone everyone that was named was totally fine, you know what I mean? Like, it felt very realistic to you're losing people. They mention at one point that, like, someone is, like, shot in the head and lives, and somebody else is, like, gets cut and dies of infection, and
mhm,
kind of showing that, like,
Yeah.
war's really messy and nobody is safe type
Yeah.
of thing. I really liked how she did that
right.
as
Yeah.
well.
I
'Cause I
agree.
feel like a lot of times you get these big battles and it's like, all these, like, nobody characters die, people that you don't care about, but, like, your core group's totally fine.
Yep.
Right,
And you got to see Jen, like, losing people that, like,
Yeah.
meant
right.
a lot to him.
And
Yeah.
this isn't the first time in the series that that's happened, right? That's happened pretty consistently throughout the series.
Yeah.
Your main characters in POV, they're going to last throughout,
Yeah.
but you have so many different skirmishes and wars, honestly, throughout the series, and you consistently see kind of the burden of being responsible for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then now we have little Eugenia.
I know.
the next scene.
I, like, completely forgotten about that. I read that, I was like, "Oh."
I laughed so hard. My husband was, like, vacuuming behind me, and I started cackling. There's, like, a scene where, Eugenides, like, realizes that she's pregnant, and he was like, "It is" well, how did he word it? Like, "It is not a good place for you to be," and she's like, "Well, it didn't happen on my own."
Right.
And I was, like, laughing so hard.
Yeah. I
Right.
also thought it funny. He was like, "Well," he's like, like, "Well, how do you feel about, like, where we, like, throw her out the window? We'll wait till it snows.
Yeah.
Right,
It'll be
exactly.
fine." 'Cause
It's like, I
he's
mean,
like,
it's
"No."
common practice in Edis. It's proof that they're in the hands of the god.
Yeah.
Didn't
I
become
also
inappropriate by myself, that's what it was.
Right,
I
right.
laughed so hard first. I had to, like, pause the
Right,
book for a second because I was laughing.
right.
Yeah.
And also, right at the end, um, Edis tells him, "You never ask anything. Y Don't command your wife to go back to the capital, just ask.
Yeah.
Try it."
Yeah.
You didn't even ask the gods for anything. You're just, like, doing things and hoping it works
Tell
out.
me tell me
Yeah.
what to do, yeah.
Just ask a question.
Yep.
And also the fact that he had caught on that Edis was also pregnant and soon as
Wait,
yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly delightful.
Yeah.
yeah.
I also liked that we saw, Edis's visions of, the sacred mountain
Mhm.
exploding or yeah, exploding, erupting, that's the word I'm
Yeah,
like,
it was like volcano
um,
things.
right. I was like, "What is that thing
Yeah.
called?" Um, I like that we see that she is gonna be able to save her people, and again, all of this is kind of bigger than them,
Yeah.
Yeah,
um, while still letting them be the focus of the story, and I think that that is a delicate balance that she did really well.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a story in Moira's pen that's pretty interesting that's of a ceremony where Edis throws like basically casts the Hamayathes's gift or whatever it is
Mhm,
Oh, yeah.
back into the volcano,
mhm.
which is like interesting.
Yes, yeah, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Um, what do you guys think about the elephants and Eugenides?
It's like I'm such a
It was so funny. It was great. He's like, I want one of those.
He was like, "Alright, man. Of course you do."
And also, like, Atolia definitely knew what he was doing, but him coming up with ridiculous plans to be
Yeah,
able to take care of the elephants, and she
Yeah.
yeah.
was like, "It would be easier just to build a bigger stable," and he's like, "Great idea,
Yeah.
great idea."
You're right.
He's like, you said it, not me.
That seems like a solution.
Sophos being clueless is
Yes,
classic.
it was. Um,
Oh,
but
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah, I
just
thought it was a good ending, like,
yeah, I agree.
especially, like, you mentioned this, like, how this was so much later, like, there's such a big amount of time in between that it could have it could have been a big mess, but she did
mhm.
a very good job making it feel
Yeah.
completed.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, and then she gets the elephants for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
true love.
I
Because it
love
feels like even though it feels like we're wrapping up Jen's story with like the next generation being born.
Yeah,
We're still in the perspective of another character who is still, like doing interesting things with the themes of the whole series. So
yeah,
I think it works.
it
Yeah,
did. And it didn't, like, make anything too clean to make the whole
Hmm.
book like, the whole series feel, pointless.
Yeah.
It hit that balance of, you know,
and also
everyone ends in a, like, positive way,
Hmm.
but
well, and I
still
think that
perfect.
you can't I think that there is a what I'm trying to say is the fact that they're royalty and not the ones fighting
Hmm.
clearly plays a big part in them surviving. And also the fact that the gods are intervening, right, in some ways. But at the same time, Eugenides and everyone else has to follow what the gods say and
Right.
has to, you know,
Yeah.
they still have free will. They still are able to mess it up if they allow, you know, what they want to supersede what they were told to do.
Yeah.
And even like the warning from the vision of the guy that he killed that hated him,
Yeah.
and how he could have messed up. He could have killed Ferris.
Mhm.
Ferris?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he could have messed that up, and if he didn't figure it out, if he wasn't willing to listen to Sejanus, is that how you say his name? I don't remember. But, like, he has very real emotions and very real distrust and hatred and all of those things, and if he allows any of those things to get in his way, the queens are captured, the Medes win, he loses everything, you
Yeah.
know, all of that, I think, really, helps it to not be just so convenient.
Yeah. Yeah, he still has to make his own decisions using the information that is given to him.
You know what we didn't talk about that I thought was interesting is that Ferris can see the gods,
Yeah.
That's true.
which is also, I think, so fascinating. Like when no one else can, he sees everything that's going on, even more than Jen can.
Mhm. Yeah.
I kind of wonder if maybe the idea of him being able to do that isn't because the gods wanted their part recorded and he was going to do the history of it, and they
Yeah.
were like, "Yeah, you're gonna know what's
Maybe.
happening."
Yeah.
Yeah. Which really plays into at the beginning where he was like, "I don't need to embellish it because it's already crazy."
Yeah.
And I also liked, because I thought that it was clever. He's writing it like you're in that world, right? And like you already know, like this is such a infamous part of our history. You already know about the great king. You already know all this. But let me tell, like sometimes this part right here is overdone, and
Yeah.
let me tell you what really happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the do not overreach thing. That too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was an important part,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think.
and that he knew that it would destroy um Jen to know who the collaborators were.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, just the idea that Jen is maybe the greatest person of his generation, and he's still just a person
He's still
with
just
all the same
yeah.
struggles and all of the same, you know,
Overreactions or
emotions. Yeah,
snap judgments and
Right.
right.
Yeah.
He's incredibly clever on his own. He's in a position of power. He is, in many ways, a good person. Again, like in the last book, Relius talks about how he's very tenderhearted. He'll feel bad as he cuts you up into tiny pieces and feeds you to the wolves. Like he'll feel
yeah.
bad about it, but he's also ruthless.
Yeah.
Well, where was I even going with that? I don't know. I don't know. But
Yeah, and you get to see that like really well in the scene where the meat ambassador or whatever kisses Atolia and
Mhm.
he like loses his mind and throws the knife and then immediately like is crying
well,
on
it's not
her
even the
like
main ambassador. It's the ambassador of one of their
or
allies.
yeah, that's what it is. One of the Baron ambassador dudes, but
He was
yeah.
but and how that
Yeah,
affects the
audacity.
war so
Mhm.
much because they won't give them the ships unless he apologizes.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that."
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, honestly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Like
And
like the
also
audacity to do that is wild.
Right?
right. Also the, when I feel bad again, like, you see the other ambassador that he kinda considered a friend and had a lot of trust in,
Yeah.
and the allies aren't coming, and he's just been, you know, killing time, letting them think that they are coming, And he's like, look, I'm just following orders. And Eugenides is like, you better hope I win or I die. Because if I live, I'm coming. I'm killing every single one
That was
of your rulers that chose this. And your king, where I know exactly where he is, he's going to be last. And I'm swearing this before the gods. And I'm saying it 3 times so it happens for real. You better hope one of these 2 outcomes is the outcome. And then, things are briefly touched on that things are changing with their allies, and they're like, oh, well, actually, we want to be friends again.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
We have seen firsthand that the gods are very on your side. We decide we changed our mind.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this will all be all that's left. Yeah.
Right. And that thief is the one that the Adesian Council was right to fear.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like too, especially because you haven't seen much of the thief in the last half of this series, and especially again me waiting all these years for this book to be published. I was so happy to see those appearances again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun in the last book to get those glimpses of him, especially because especially for him too, losing his hand, making him feel like I'm not that thief anymore. I can't be that thief anymore. And then have in this book him get to this point where he's like, I'm going to make this happen because I'm so bad at all of these different people.
And just him kind of finding a way to be both, right? He was still, there's some particular line in there where I think it's where he says about being the king till the river, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he also says, and forever or something, the thief of somebody. I don't remember, but
yeah, that's we're right at the end when they escape the camp and he's like forever the I also really liked the scene where they're all chasing him.
Yeah.
Through and Atolia and Edis are just sitting there and they're like, he'll be fine.
Yeah. That's funny.
He's like swinging from chandeliers and falling into the water.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was good.
Yeah, I had a good time with this series overall. I can see why it's been one of your favorites, Heather.
I'm also glad that Nahusarish died.
Oh yeah, that was really satisfying.
Yeah. He was the worst.
I was like, no. We cannot end with this little weasel alive. I hate him.
I need you to be gone, my man.
Yeah.
You've been a thorn in everyone's side for many books at this point.
Yes.
I need you to go away.
Yep.
So. Yeah, no. Good times.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Yes, you do.
I was just going to say at the end, I liked the little dance with Moira with the just like him being the scribe or scholar or whatever, and then her obviously being like the goddess of. I thought that was a cute little wrap up to the end of the book.
That's true.
I agree, Cynthia. The fact that his death was almost like you didn't see that scene. It wasn't down. It wasn't on stage.
Nope.
It was just
he just did.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause he thought he was gonna get the queen and
it's like the whole time he had this vision of grandeur, and in the end he was nobody.
Right. I think that he was almost the counterpoint to Eugenides, because especially in this book, Eugenides had to not let his own personal vision be what was important. And even the general told Nahusarish, your brother, nobody cares about your what's that word? His ambitions.
No one
cares about your ambitions. If Eugenides is
Yeah.
willing to sign, you're not gonna be nobody cares. You're here because people are tired of dealing with you, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're not in charge.
Yeah.
You might think you're in charge, you're not even in charge here.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly like you said, Robin, like he wanted to be the main character, he wanted to be the ruler, he wanted to be all
Yeah.
these things, and he ended up with nothing.
Yeah, he was nobody.
Yep. Absolutely.
Which is the opposite of Eugenides, who really
Yeah. Who never wanted
leave
people
him alone.
alone. Didn't want any of this.
Yep.
Yeah. No.
Which is part of why he's the right person for it.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was I was gonna write it down too, because there was some comment about colonization and stuff in here, and I was like, oh wow, this is very timely, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh.
But there was definitely a couple moments where I was just like, ooh, yeah, this is
Mhm.
really mirroring present day.
Right.
It's
And like you
unfortunate.
said, Bethany, I do think that stuff like this for this age group, I've always kind of assumed or felt like part of my empathy for people who are in different positions than me has always been reading books that like this,
Mhm.
where whether it is a historical account and true to our world, or obviously I read a lot of fantasy growing up as well,
Mhm.
but and I remember even as a kid like thinking this way and being like, okay, um whether it's this series or not, where I have so much empathy for the plight of these people who this isn't a real class of people. They don't it's not um it's not in our world, but if I can't translate that to the very obvious real life correlation, then
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
makes me the bad people. That makes me
Right.
these people who are, you know, I hate on these pages. And I remember like thinking about that a lot as a kid. And I really just feel like that is a foundational building block of
Yeah.
feeling that way. And I think sometimes it is easier because maybe you are growing up with the adults around you saying, I don't know, those people, you know,
Mhm.
whatever.
Those people.
But when you're reading about a made up group, you don't have to, especially as a kid, I think, take in the idea that, oh, like they're arguing, like they're the opposite opinion of my parents or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
You get to
have
kind of see it from the outside looking in.
right.
That's what I think is really powerful about speculative fiction is it gives
Mhm.
people a way to think about things that are relevant without all of the clutter of sort of like
The
preformed
real world. Yeah.
expectations.
It gives you
But
a different
yeah.
perspective.
Well,
Of
and I
course.
think this is also though, but I do think books are so powerful. It's part of why all the book banning stuff is concerning of like kids
Mhm.
having access to books that
Yeah.
will give them the opportunity to build
Right,
empathy and
Mhm.
yeah.
right. And obviously and that is the issue, right? If you allow the Queen's Thief series because these aren't real groups of people, and then you ban other books simply because there's a Black person on the cover,
Right.
and or you as the reader never do that translation of taking the made up world and applying it to your
Yeah.
own prejudices, then
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
it doesn't go anywhere. You have to make that transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Um, that comment triggered it. It was right at, I think it was like pretty early on, but it was the Mede Empire talking about how if they are strong enough, then they have the right to do it.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, too close to home.
Mm.
right. Yeah,
Like,
it's great.
too real.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I just read,
I feel like we're living in an alternate reality where like Nuhu Suresh got the throne.
Yeah, and they kept talking about the oligarchy, the oligarchy. And I was
Oh
just
my
like,
god. Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like,
I just read, the 3rd book, Last Chance to Save the World, by Beth Revis. It's sci-fi
Mhm.
romance novellas. And there's a billionaire slash trillionaire in there that is like basically Elon Musk, like basically him. And I was like, oh, this is so relatable. I don't love this.
Great.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if
For Star Wars,
Yeah, with Star Wars, which has always been like
it was
that
like it
since
was
the
literally
beginning, like, that's what it is.
yeah. Even the creator was like, this was a commentary on war.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, and, and yeah, and, like, Star Trek was the first show to have an interracial kiss on television.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice relay time.
so many
So
things where it's like, wow, you really
you really missed the point.
not get it.
yeah,
Didn't get it at all.
yeah. It was huge. We read, for my, like, patron book club, we read a graphic memoir from George Takei
Mhm.
about his experience as a kid in the Japanese internment camps and
Yeah.
stuff. But then it's interesting because towards the end he talks about like becoming an actor and stuff and meeting with Gene Roddenberry and how it was like a huge deal to have a role for where like it wasn't about him being Asian in like a kind of racist way or something, that like that was groundbreaking just to have roles like that available where he was looking for people of different ethnicities. So
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I remember I don't know what age I was. I was a kid or a young teenager or something, I don't know. I remember learning about the Japanese internment camps in America for the first time, and I was like, "What?
yeah,
What are we what?
yeah.
Like,
Apparently
what
there's
do
a
you
lot of people
mean?"
who like one thing I found out when we did book club is there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, I didn't ever know about it until I
Mm,
was an adult. They weren't taught about it in school at all. So
yeah.
like
We're
some areas
never the bad guys. You can just erase that from history, and then we're never the bad guys.
Right, exactly.
just what
I
state curriculums are doing now, you know?
And I was like that.
Mhm.
I joke about it, but that's actually real now.
I mean, honestly, yeah, it's yeah.
I think
If
that's
we
actually
just don't talk about it.
Mhm.
I read this really interesting series as a kid. It was for school. It was a history series. And he was basically writing things as much as possible, and he mentioned that this was not completely possible, but writing histories from a neutral standpoint as much as he could write, and he talked a lot about how the victors write the histories, and obviously, like, I think, and I don't know what it was, but, I think that that might have even been where I learned about, the Japanese camps and stuff. It's one of them is Richard
Or
J. Mayberry. It's Whatever Happened to Penny Candy is
Hmm.
one of them. I was just able to find that. It's the Uncle Eric books.
Hmm.
Um, and it does the world wars and stuff. And it one of the things that I talked about, was the atomic bombs and how the United States talks about how actually it was great. It ended the war, it prevented so many casualties and everything like that. And him talking about how like that's not how you would feel about it if if it was dropped on you. That's not how you would feel about it. That's how somebody else feels about it.
Yeah.
Um and actually as a kid I heard a woman speak, and she wasn't that old, I don't think, but, she was, like, the little girl after the bomb that was on the cover of the Times Magazine or whatever it was. Like, she was the little girl, and she t talked about her experience, and how, like, even the soldiers there were like the United States soldiers were horrified and were like trying to help, but no one really knew how to help,
Yeah.
how they made it worse and, all of that.
There's a lot of stuff from that time because, like, the other thing too that I didn't know about until I was an adult was some of the stuff that the Japanese were doing in China during that time period with, like, doing horrific experiments on people and stuff, so, like, all of that and that the US took like, gave refuge to some of those scientists because they wanted to use the data from the research they were doing that ended up being, like, a big part of things US did with, like, technology and medicine and stuff, so there's, like, some pretty
That's
Right.
the 40 acres and
A mule.
a mule, thank you. That, like, it's spiked on Google because all of a sudden people are like, "Wait, why didn't I learn this?" And everyone's like, "Because the US was never going to write all of these, like, awful things that they did into their own history. They just, like, cover it all up and pretend
yeah,
like it never happened."
yeah.
And
Right.
they're like, "Look, we ended slavery instead."
Mhm.
And
Right.
when in reality, it's like there's a lot more dark stuff that happened that has just been
Right.
wiped.
Well, and I think too, one sec.
No, it's
Yeah.
pretty horrendous when you start to read more, and I think as I've been
Yeah.
older, like, I've read more history of
Mhm.
different things, time periods, things like what was going on, during the Jim Crow era in the South, and, like, there's a lot of really
And
horrifying things.
when these authors make these, like, really difficult topics into YA fiction, I think it makes it digestible for teenagers then. It's
Yeah,
not just, straight heavy information. It's being able to see it through the lens of someone my age,
yeah,
like, I'm learning this information and I'm seeing it with through the eyes of somebody like me.
yeah.
Right.
Or even, like, I don't know, one thing that's interesting, so my oldest kid went through a big phase of being obsessed with the Wings of Fire series, which is, like,
Mm.
middle grade series about dragons, and I've read several of the books, and they also are really interesting because they tackle big issues, but through dragons.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
there's, like, a book that's really about, like, medical experimentation, like, in a negative way, and,
Right.
I was like, "Wow, but we're doing this with dragons," so it's, like, introduced I don't know, it's just
Right.
interesting. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
authors that I think are doing a really good job with stuff like that.
Yeah,
Mm.
introducing these more difficult things, but
Mhm.
in a way that isn't just preachy to this kid that's like, "No, I'm gonna keep your attention by
Right. Well,
making you
and
fit dragons," and like
right. Well, and also not overly traumatic, I guess, too.
yeah, exactly.
Where it's enough of a buffer that they can, like, get the
Yeah,
information and process it without it just being
yeah,
traumatizing.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, the US is young as far as countries go, right? But you take any 5-year period, like any 5-year period, and I think that we'd all be shocked at the amount of horrific things that government and society did in those 5 years. I like, there's no time that's
Yeah,
good, and like you were saying, Bethany, there's governments and people in power use wars to justify horrific things. Like, it's
mhm.
okay that we're doing this awful thing because victory.
Yeah,
Right.
Like, we have to be ahead of the competition. Like,
It's like if it
again,
was victory or it was like, "We have to stop communism,"
right,
or, like,
right,
whatever it
but
is.
then the victor gets to write the history of it and put it in
and also
whatever
yeah,
frame of
mhm.
reference.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, even, like, the genocide of the Native Americans or slavery, so much of that is reduced to a paragraph in a textbook, like,
I listened
nothing.
to a podcast called The Morning Show Podcast, and it was talking about how, the US possibly going back on the peace treaty with Ukraine, and he made a comment and he was like, "There's precedent. just ask any Native American you have ever met. And I was like, wow. And I was like, that is
Yeah.
dark and very true, my man. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing good.
It's like we have these like this aspirational sort of thing, like
Yeah.
the home of the free and the land of the brave, and I'm like, it's like and I think growing up, I learned so much of this sort of like patriotic, like the aspirational ideas behind parts of the Constitution and stuff, and then you realize like how far we have mostly been from so much of that,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
some things have gotten better, but then right now we're in this place where it feels like blowback, and
Yeah.
everything is so much worse.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well,
And so
true, that's
sometimes you need these fantasies that in the end.
yeah,
yeah,
you do, and kids do, and it is important,
yeah,
it's just important to care for other people, and that's really the baseline building block thing. Just care about other people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
mean, governments
I agree.
aren't good. And then, society as a whole
Yeah.
isn't good either, like,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe it was once upon a time before colonization in some parts of the world, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And I think this book did a good job of highlighting colonization in a way that was understandable and digestible, by having, the Medes, and then you have all of these states that are arguing amongst themselves. And
Mhm.
is any of the, and Jen too, talking about this, like, what is the right way to do this? Because all of it feels wrong.
Mhm.
None of this feels good.
yeah.
None of these ways have clearly worked. Um,
Ugh. Yeah.
Happy Saturday.
It's like we
Well,
live in like the world is so dystopian. It's-
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Exactly. Everything we create is flawed.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think I still want to have hope for the future, and I think try to see
Yeah.
where there has always been forward movement, even if it is sort of like two steps forward, one step back.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
like, I do think it's hard when we're like now in the middle of that sort of step back thing where it's like there's some backlash. But like, my hope is that this
Yeah.
is because we're on the cusp of seeing significant change for some stuff. I don't know.
Right. And I think it's just important to remember that at every time in history, there was opposition to the horrific things that were happening, right? There were
Yeah.
people who believed it was wrong, who actively put
Hmm.
themselves on the line and their resources and their community put themselves on the line to make a difference with it. It was never just, oh, racism was accepted back then. There was always people pushing back against it,
Yeah.
always naming
Right.
it for the evil that it was, you know, in every time of history. So as bad as things are at the moment and as much as it feels very depressing, one, you have to remember that the most marginalized people have always been fighting. So if you have any form of privilege, you need to not just doomsday it and give up. And I mean, it's been a
Yeah.
month. Probably people, it's been a month. Like
Yeah.
you still need to be doing what you can, no matter what.
And there are things that we can do, even if I don't know. I like to the people who are talking right now about how like if you just have a tiny bit of energy, right? That like it still counts to just like be educated on what's going on and like talk to the people in your
Mm,
community that like that is something if that's all you can do. But
right.
like
And I
I don't know.
think with the at this current time with social media and internet,
Mhm.
it feels like everything should move faster. And when you look back historically, like big changes didn't happen in 4 weeks.
No.
They can't. But we're so used to things happening so quickly that
Right.
we feel like it should happen at this big scale, and it can't happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think there are, like there's encouraging things happening. So
Yeah.
like one thing my husband and I were talking about the other day that's really interesting is that behind the scenes, the administration is really frustrated because they're not able to get higher levels of immigrants to deport. Like they're hitting Obama levels right now and they want it to be way higher. Um, but they're frustrated because they don't have the money or the infrastructure. And also, it has been really effective that people have been educating people on their rights to help protect them.
Yeah.
And so, like there are things that are effectively pushing back on what's going
Mhm.
on and keeping it from being what they want it, like as bad as it could be. So
Mhm.
I think that's the thing too, is realizing that like it's not all totally dire. Like
The NIH did, go against and start funding things again,
good.
and then 2 people mysteriously retired.
Love that for
But
them.
yeah, we got 2 grants. They were just like, "Well," suddenly Wednesday night, the NIH just started granting money, and I
Oh
was like,
wow.
"Oh, dear."
Well, that's interesting to hear. Because I have a friend who's like on a grant and has been, I don't know, because we're part of like a university. My spouse is
Yeah, that's what
faculty.
I'm part of a university, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of conversation around like the push to decrease overhead to
Mhm.
15%.
Yeah, we actually have a, what did they call it? It's called ERT. It's a emergency response team right now because people are so stressed out
Yeah.
Mhm.
about being deported or having their visas revoked or, all of the different, like, medical, because I work for a medical college, um, and so, yeah, all of a sudden we got an email and they were like, in the middle of the night on Wednesday, the NIH just pushed through a bunch of grants, and then within 24 hours, they were like, "This director is mysteriously stepping down," and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, dear." He was just like, "Not on my watch."
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was like, "There are people doing it, it's
There
just."
are. There
Yeah.
are. Well, and like 7 people just resigned from,
Mhm.
I don't know how much you guys follow New York state stuff, but like Trump wants the case, like a corruption case against our mayor dropped, and
Right.
like seven people resigned in protest from the local office.
Yeah.
I mean, you keep hearing about all the different, like, federal, organizations that are like, "No, we showed up and we were, fighting to get into the building, or we were protesting to get into the
Mhm.
building." So I think it's just our perception now too, is we have
Mhm.
so much more information or
Yeah,
access to information than we ever did
yeah,
historically, and it happens at such a rapid pace
mhm,
that our perception of how things should be happening and at
mhm,
what pace they should be happening is so skewed now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated, Cynthia, because it's like it's the state, um, whatever the legal, I can't think of the word for it, like the DA,
But
it's
at
like
this
the New York DA office, I think,
Yeah,
Mhm.
district attorney. So it's not
it's not a federal.
yeah, it's not they're not getting placed by Trump. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I do think it's also important though because that gets attention and we do
Mhm,
have a mayoral election coming up, and so
yep,
part of it is like having the conversation be around, okay, like can we elect somebody else
yeah,
next time?
I
So,
I think really it's just none of us can do everything,
mhm,
right? One individual cannot change everything. All of us can do something,
yeah,
and, fascism and all of those the types of, um, oppressive things work best when people ignore the fact that they're happening, when they
yeah,
don't do anything about it.
yeah,
So, anything that you can do cumulatively is worthwhile,
Yeah.
even when it feels like it's nothing. Um,
And the
it's better
bombardment
than
is on
nothing. It
purpose.
is better than nothing.
Yeah. The bombardment is a personal or is a purposeful thing. Because
Yeah.
if you get, as a human being, as you get overwhelmed, you're more likely to shut down.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so it is purposefully a
Mhm.
lot at one time to wear people out.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And
Which I think
that's the thing. You know, using a book to take a break from
yeah,
daily life is totally fine.
yeah.
Like, that's good, that's healthy. Um, just pretending like daily life doesn't exist
Right.
yeah,
is
Well, and I think that's the thing though, is it's like realizing like, we're in this for the long haul. Like this is not it's been a few weeks,
yeah,
but it's also part of why it's like I think it's important to take care of yourself and not stretch yourself so thin that you burn out and can't do anything to like be realistic, do self-care, pace yourself and also think about like what can you do that will do something and
right,
how can you set yourself up for being available to be involved over time,
and
and so like in the book community, right, it's like sometimes what I feel like I'm like, okay, I can continue to read and recommend books by marginalized authors,
yeah,
which I've always been doing, but it's like I can keep doing that, like we're rolling back DEI, okay, but like we
not here,
can
we're not
not here
yeah.
for that.
right, right,
And I think that's why it makes, I think, a lot of people frustrated when you get that, like, "Well, this is my safe space."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Well, yeah, it can a book can be your personal safe space,
Mhm.
but it
right.
can't you can't live there.
Yeah.
You can't live in that safe."
And also your safe
Unfortunately
space shouldn't mean that there's no one
exactly, yeah. I mean,
reading it.
every book that I pick up for that hour or whatever is, yeah, my safe space.
Well, also though, my
So,
concern is like, are you saying that for it to be safe, it
it
needs
needs
to
to
be
be
like by a
exactly.
cis white straight author? Like, is
Exactly,
that
and, like,
like
every
'cause
book
that
that
is concerning. Like, I
yeah,
get if you don't want to pick up like a traumatizing
yeah,
nonfiction or something serious, like sure, read a fluffy romance or something, but like if the idea is that
yeah,
because I'm recommending a book with like people with
Black
brown skin
Joy book or
on the
whatever.
color, like, on the cover, like, and
Yeah,
that's the non-safe space, we have a bigger problem.
Right,
exactly, and I think that's exactly it is, it's like,
Yeah,
every book that I'm picking up, yeah, for that brief moment in time can be your rejuvenation.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be trauma heavy.
Right.
Um, exactly, it's not there is
mhm,
a privilege that comes with having something that is a space that makes you feel safe. There's privilege in that. There's a lot of people out there who don't have that,
That's
and
true too. Yeah.
well, and also you could say that my channel is my safe space. I talk about
yeah,
all sorts of stuff on here.
Yeah.
It's not a safe space for white supremacists,
everybody.
and
Right.
if a white
That's
supremacist can feel comfortable there,
mhm,
then I
yeah,
don't wanna be there.
and
Like,
that's
honestly,
exactly it. It's
that
Well,
is
honestly,
my
that's true, it's like, who is it a safe space
line.
for?
yeah.
Right. Um,
My channel, my page, my whatever, it is not a safe space for
yeah,
everybody.
Yeah.
I am
and, like,
not
and
trying to make
there are channels, they're not doing anything wrong. They're
Mhm,
not going on racist rants on their
mhm.
channel or anything, but but anybody can watch and not feel confronted by
Like,
the
yeah,
existence of other people.
right,
yeah,
right.
And that's my line. I'm like, "Would a white supremacist be comfortable here? Would they ever hear anything that, you know, they find offensive? If
Mhm.
not, then I don't wanna be here."
the
Yeah.
500 followers that I have lost in the last 2 months or whatever over on Instagram. I'm down 500.
Wow. Dang, that's wild. I mean, I've been down and then slowly creeping back up, but, like, it's no, I mean, it's but you know what? I've always done this stuff.
Well,
So did I,
I'm
and I think
so good.
yeah,
She's
and I think
like,
that's what's
"I'm
wild, like
confused."
I think here's the thing, is it happened in November is when it
Okay.
started to tank, and I think at that point was when people were like, "I'm not gonna pretend anymore," and they just,
For
like,
real.
left because they felt empowered at that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah,
"I'm not going to be a safe space for you to feel empowered,
right.
No.
so
There
if
was
you
a
wanna
lot
leave"
Yeah.
a lot of book accounts celebrating the,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
the
And so I
lesson.
think
I
that's
did
why
make a
it
video
wasn't
about, but
that I suddenly started doing it because it's always been that
Right.
way, but I think they felt safe to be like, "Well, I don't need to
right,
pretend anymore."
Yeah.
right,
That's interesting.
for real though.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. People
Yeah.
are
But
Well,
they'll continue reading The Hunger Games and,
Mhm.
right.
you know.
I
Yeah.
think that people kind of do a disservice when they're like, "I don't understand how anybody can read and can be a conservative." And it's like, well, that's not a disqualifier. Like,
I mean, there's all kinds of books, and also you
right,
can ignore things in a lot of books if you want to, you know?
right.
Yeah. And again, because if it's fantasy, for a lot of people, it's easy to pretend like, "Oh, this isn't woke behavior because it's
Right.
fantasy."
Yeah.
And then when someone points out the fact that, "Hey, this parallels reality," then they're
Then they're
wrong.
annoyed, and they're
Yeah,
like, "Why do we
"Oh,
have to talk about that?"
why do we have to be like that?" It's like, "That it was
Every
always the point, my man." It was
every
always the
time
point.
I see on like Twitter and stuff, not to be too woke, I feel like stabbing somebody. I'm literally
I
like,
hate
that
that word
is the
so much.
most frustrating thing you could have possibly done with that. Like, it drives me up the wall
Yeah.
because not only is it such a bastardization of the original,
Exactly.
meaning, but also it's just like, what are you talking about? What do
Yeah.
you mean?
Well,
Like,
that's
that's
what I think is really funny
I
is, like,
was like,
is the thing where people will ask, like, "Oh, woke, what does that mean to you?" And people struggle to give an
no
answer.
idea.
Yeah.
They don't know.
They're like, "I don't know what it means."
They're like, just or stuff I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Burn Democrats. Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm just like, plus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't words mean things. Language means things. Labels mean things. When you continue to be like, "Oh, I feel like a lot of times it's justifying to people the very thing that you're saying not to be too woke, but you're saying having the opinion that someone who is suffering in this way shouldn't be suffering in this way
Mhm.
is too woke, is too extreme, is too liberal, whatever you wanna title it as,
Yeah.
um, that's bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be, normalizing that language. You shouldn't be normalizing that viewpoint, even as you're technically pushing back against it.
Yeah.
Um,
You know
Yeah.
you're not being
what
helpful.
is driving me crazy right now is, have you guys seen, I mean, not to get more controversial, but, have you
Yeah.
Who cares? It's just me and Cynthia. They don't mind.
Right. Have you guys seen the stuff that's coming out with Daniel Green?
Oh, yeah.
So, one of the things that I think is a little frustrating, um, is there's a lot of men commenting basically like, "Yep, that's what happens when you have a feminist man." And I'm like, Okay. Like a leftist feminist, they're all like these, which I'm like, okay, maybe we're not taking the right thing away from this. Like,
Right.
on the one hand, I do think there's a grain of truth in that I have generally not seen great things from a lot of men who sort of make being a feminist their whole personality.
Right.
But
Uh, what's
like,
the
But I
favorite quote
assure
is
you that you can also see not great things from men who make being anti-feminist their entire personality. Like
100%.
misogyny is their personality.
Yeah.
Also
yeah,
true.
Yeah, exactly. I
Also
mean,
true.
there is something to be said for being like quietly a feminist if you're a man, I guess, but,
Yeah.
the
I
fact that the takeaway from this is like, "Yeah, all, leftist feminist men are
yeah.
predators," is
I think
like
it's
liberal
more of
feminism.
if you have to tell me, if you have to say the words, "I am a feminist," or whatever, then you're not.
Right.
Because if you
Right.
were, you didn't if you have to tell people that you are something, you're not that thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I told my husband this one time because in the 15 years that we've been together, we were both more right. I was more right than he was, and then he's also gone this way. But I'm more extreme than he is,
I feel
right?
like this is kind of
On
what my
both
marriage
ends.
has been as well.
Surprise! I'm more extreme. Who would have known? But I told him I was like, because sometimes we'll be like talking about something and it's like a little bit of a little bit of a disagreement because I'm like, no, like ABC. And he's like, I don't know about ABC. And I'm like, the thing that makes like that not bother me nearly as much as it could is
Mhm.
because regardless of I don't know, regardless of like big picture, whether you believe that this thing in the government is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened or not.
Yeah.
Not saying he voted for Trump. I'm not saying that. um, but is that he believes in basic human rights. He believes in being kind to people. Like, he's
Yeah.
not going to ever just stand there and be like, "Oh, no, that abuse is fine because of who it's happening to."
Right.
Like, that is just such a baseline, can't be taught,
Yeah.
basic thing, and, like, because, again, we were talking about, like, feminism and misogyny and stuff, and it's like, it doesn't bother me that because I say misogyny 17 times a day, mostly as a joke. If my
It
kids
applies.
if my kids are, like, picking a guy as their favorite superhero, I'm like, "And you know why? Misogyny." Like, it doesn't matter what it is. But it's just like, um, like, that basic belief that you think that women are people,
Mhm.
and you think that
Yeah, you
non-white
shouldn't have to say
are
it.
people,
Yeah.
and you don't think that they're only valuable if you wanna have sex with them,
Yeah.
like, that you're already you're better.
Right. I mean, but that's the thing is, like, that's the thing that you just see in how they live their lives,
Yeah,
right? Like, that's the thing you
exactly.
see in, like, like, how they treat employees. That's how, like,
Yeah.
how
Has
they
he ever told
show
somebody
up
to
in your
smile?
relationship, like,
Right,
yeah, how they treat your kids. Like, like, it's not something that has to be, like, necessarily soapboxed about. You
Yeah,
right,
just they live it.
right. And
Yeah.
so, I do think that sometimes when it does become the soapbox, it is a little bit
exactly. I'm like, "You're covering for
I have side eye when it's like a
Yeah,
soapbox. I'm a little I don't know.
yeah. I'm
because
like, "You're covering
I
for
just feel like
something."
if you believe people are people,
Yeah,
you don't go around mentioning it every single day.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know the other thing that has bugged me about the situation? Sorry, I haven't, like, really talked publicly.
I
I
haven't
made, like,
either, yeah.
a community post, but I haven't, like, talked publicly about this. But, like, the other thing that's bugging me is I'm seeing so many videos talking about it from these, like, small male booktubers who are getting so racking up views, and I just it and people being like, I'm waiting for, like, women to talk about it," and I'm like, "You know why? It's because, like, we realize, like, more women probably realize it feels sort of, like, predatory, like, messed up to capitalize on somebody else's abuse in that
Honestly,
way."
that's why I didn't even watch their video
Yeah.
because I saw people that I already know
Mhm.
posting about it, and I was like, "Alright, I believe it. I believe you. I
Yeah,
believe what you're saying." And not saying that everybody that viewed their video felt this way, but to me, I was like, "I already believe you. I don't need my curiosity satisfied by
Mhm.
watching this in order to
Yeah,
believe you.
yeah,
I really, really don't."
yeah.
And so, I don't think I want to. And I definitely don't wanna make a video about it, and I definitely don't wanna watch someone else's video about it.
yeah,
Yeah,
Same, like, it feels gross that they had to make that video in the first place,
right,
right? That feels gross. That's bad that they had to put their trauma
right,
out there as content simply to try and be believed,
right.
right? And to try and have things, get bad.
I mean, I have a ton of respect for the fact that they did because I think,
Oh, yeah.
like, it's
Sure.
gonna probably save people in the future as well,
For sure.
but it's a
I'm
huge
yeah.
it's so difficult to do, and I understand also not watching it if you can't deal with it because it's, like,
Right.
graphic descriptions of things
It's
that
very I did
happen.
not make it through all the way. It is very intense. It's
It is very graphic, but,
yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's just
have
interesting.
so much respect
See,
for
this makes sense, I guess.
yeah,
Like, I can see this, especially if you are a psychiatrist,
yeah.
but I'm like, what do I have to add to the situation other
I
than telling people, "Hey, like, go
believe
watch this if
women.
you can,"
Right.
and I support them
Right.
and believe
And one of the few men that I am even subscribed to, maybe the only no, okay. One of the few is, Gavin, and I appreciated that he did a post because, again, like, if you are someone who has interacted with
I think
the
that's
person that is being, accused of being an abuser and also of having such influence in the community, and again, this is one of those things where the biggest factor in how this is going to play out, I feel like, is whether men are willing to believe that this happened and that this was bad, or whether they're going to continue to prop him up. And so I do think just saying, "Hey, I believe Naomi, I will not
yeah,
be, supporting him. I will not be
but
protecting."
we don't need your think piece on it.
yeah, I don't
Exactly.
care about your opinion, rando.
I
Right.
think the only person whose video I did watch and appreciated was Ben, what is it, like, Totally Average Ben or something like that.
I
Because he made a video responding to a joke video someone else made
I
commenting on it,
saw Gavin
and,
mention
like,
that.
about how that was inappropriate and take it seriously, so I would like, that's the only one that I'm like, "Okay, yeah, like, that's the way to do it," but
Yeah,
most of the rest of it, it's like, we don't need your think piece on, like,
especially
whether I don't
yeah,
know, whether or not
especially
you believe
because
it.
she or they gain nothing by posting that video. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the story is out there and it will hopefully benefit other people, but Naomi themselves does not nothing good is added to their life for that.
well,
And I
nothing
think
ever
that
is. I
that's
mean,
one of
like,
the things
when women speak up or people
every time a
speak up
woman
about
speaks
abuse,
up yeah.
it's
Their life is not going to be better. Like, even best case scenario, if that person is convicted and taken away, that person's life is still harder now.
yeah,
People look at them as, "Oh, well, you ruined this person's life," or
right.
"You
Well,
why didn't you
like
speak up about this?" Or why
right,
their life is altered. People now interact with them differently.
right.
And
Well,
whenever I see someone that's like, "Well, I need both sides of the story," I'm like, "No, you don't."
you don't no.
Because their
Especially not
life
in this case. I'm like, what's really damning is that cease and desist letter when his name was never mentioned.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
like,
like
you clearly saw yourself and what she was talking about, so,
Exactly.
like,
I've
that
literally
was
never watched a video and been like, "This random video is clearly about me."
Right.
let me have my lawyer send a cease and desist letter. I feel like that was the stupidest thing, and then his response was just like,
Mm,
I'm not gonna look at the camera once, I'm gonna read and just deny everything, and then say that something that happened in 2023 has taken my fiancé several years to get past.
Like, that also matters in any way.
right.
Yeah,
Like,
and
that's
also, how does
anywhere
that make you a victim? And, one thing I at least, like, a lot of comments were people saying, like, "Best case scenario, you had an affair," which is still bad enough, which I'm like, I mean, yeah.
Right. And that is important, right? The comment section, the public response, all that is important. It
Yeah,
is important to, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I know it's that saying of um false rape accusations are ruining men's lives, and it's like
Mhm.
real rape convictions aren't ruining men's lives.
No,
So, no.
no.
and that's what whenever they're like, "Well, this one time there was a fake accusation," and I'm like, "Okay,
Like, okay, yeah,
one
but
time."
it almost never.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's like
accusations are almost never fake.
it's the same argument of, like, whenever people are like, "It's harder for a Black artist," and they're like, "Well, Beyoncé," and I'm like, "Oh my god,
Oh my
you
god,
chose, like,
yeah,
the
because there's
one,
one.
one." And it's the same thing. It's like there's one person that did a false accusation on a
Mhm.
freaking billionaire,
Yeah.
and now everyone's like, well, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, they gain nothing by this random person who has nothing. They're going to get nothing out of this other than
Mhm.
hopefully
Some
helping to
closure
heal their
maybe?
trauma.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's what they're able to find through all of it, 'cause it's a
Yeah.
lot.
And
And I mean,
people
I've been around YouTube long enough, like, I knew Daniel Green wasn't great, but
did
nothing to that extent.
know him as a
Yeah.
person, right.
So, yeah. Um,
Well, and that's the thing. This is all we need from any, and I think too, you only need it from people that were associated with him in some way, or
Yeah.
who, whatever, run in the same spaces, whatever, which is
mhm,
why I haven't felt the need to
Yeah,
share
right.
it myself.
mhm.
Um, but literally all we need is, yeah, I believe Naomi will not be
Yeah.
associating with Daniel Green.
Yeah,
Here's the video
yeah,
if you feel the need to watch.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's it.
yeah.
You don't need any sort of deep dive into
Yeah.
What
into
happened, your opinions on it, it's just not yeah, we don't need that.
I'm hopeful that the initial support continues. Obviously, my biggest concern is for Naomi to be harassed
Yeah,
in comments and videos and things, which is always a very real possibility. And
yeah.
even with an initial positive, I think you
The
can
tide
see
can turn.
yeah,
I mean, we've had plenty of examples of it.
right.
I saw a comment too that someone did where they were like, watch him just like go into hiding until it blows over and then just suddenly reappear. And I was like, how
Right.
often does that happen? Like,
So often, yeah.
Right.
No,
With
this is
they
true,
were
almost as if for some people the situation was like a
it
new
is.
Netflix show. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I
yeah,
think
which
social media has a lot of that is like the idea of reality TV and social media. And you have such
Right.
disconnect from the people that you watch on YouTube, especially as only a viewer, if you don't make videos,
right,
Right.
you kind of stop seeing them as real people.
people, yeah,
Yeah, and that is my thing. Even on, like, TikTok, because, you're just scrolling, right? You're not clicking on people's videos.
Yeah.
On TikTok, sometimes I'll, like, get something where it's, like, clear that there's, like, something bad happening in this person's life, right? I'm like, if I don't already watch you, I'm not gonna stop and watch the hardest video you've ever had to make
but I
or
think
whatever,
it's like
you
there's
know?
something there's, like, the trauma porn
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
and, like, the people who are into, like, true crime, and, like, I don't
Mhm.
know, there is
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
There's lines that are crossed frequently,
Mhm.
for
yeah,
sure. No
yeah,
matter where your lines are,
like the
there are lines
parasocial
crossed.
relationships, yeah,
Yeah. It's like all the, fan fiction that comes out about real people and stuff. It's like, I think this whole idea of viewing things across a screen, it
Yeah.
really pulls the humanity
Mhm.
side out, and you
yeah.
just kinda stop seeing people as real people.
And to be
Right.
honest, like, I think there are also creators who become like that, like, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
stop seeing other creators as real people and don't
Yeah.
treat them like that either, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, this is the exact type of situation where want to make sure that people are supporting and also don't want to turn it into a spectacle any
mhm,
more than it has to be, which again is a indictment on our society that
right.
they had to make this public in the first place.
Yeah,
Right.
which is
And if
also
you
why I'm like, if I'm gonna bring it up, it's gonna be at the end of a live stream about something totally unrelated.
Yeah. And, like, I saw some other comments and stuff, and they were like, "Well, I don't know why they would make it, like, this big thing." If you don't make it a big deal, everyone brushes it away.
Yeah,
Everyone brushes it away.
yeah,
Right.
mhm,
There is no correct
Yeah,
way to handle being abused or being
yeah.
assaulted.
yeah.
There
I do
isn't.
think what's wild is, like, the stuff people in the comments who've been watching him for a long time are bringing up that I'm like, "Dang," because
Yeah.
I don't really watch
Are
his
they saying bad things about him?
well, it's interesting, like, a bunch of people have commented that they remember a live stream he did years ago doing a live, like, some kind of a fantasy quiz or something that asked about, like, which of the 7 deadly sins is
Oh, yeah.
and that he, like, said lust.
Mhm.
and like bringing that up and bringing up that he didn't want to do a deep dive on the Neil Gaiman situation and feeling like, well, maybe it was because he felt like it hit too close to home. So it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Things that don't stand on their own, but in the context of the bigger picture are more apparent.
The Neil Gaiman thing is another thing that I haven't really talked much about. It's like, it's been awful, and I've mentioned it in passing, but it's
as somebody who has had to report things before, I know what that is like. And like the idea of talking about that in a way that like you said, it's almost like a TV show or something like that. It just feels so inappropriate and belittling to the situation that because you already know that people are going to try to brush it off. Like without fighting for yourself, people will try to brush it off. And so to make it into this like discussion or commentary makes it seem like something that isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just, it feels weird to me to capitalize on somebody else's trauma.
Right.
Especially something that is ongoing and already going to receive so much commentary. It's just not.
Yeah. Again, I feel like that's this type of thing where the only right response is that's awful and I believe them and not. And especially with like Neil Gaiman, you're going to have actual journalists, you know, writing about it and doing deep dives and all of that. So you don't also need a reaction.
I also think that a lot of us in the my opinion doesn't need to be heard are the minority, unfortunately.
Right.
And there is a vast majority that feel like they're always like needed to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think there are just so many things that I'm like, my opinion on this doesn't matter.
No.
Doesn't matter.
My voice doesn't matter on this thing.
There are so many things, even like
even things that I have opinions about. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Sure. I talked to my husband about my opinions about
right. I
don't need cat if I need to get it out. Like,
well, even something that's not you know, bad or whatever, like the Kendrick Lamar halftime show.
Yeah.
You know what my contribution to that can be? Liking Black people's
I shared something and I was like, hey, this is awesome.
And it was great. And whatever. Like truly. And there's so many things like anytime I am seeing stuff and it's like white people in the comments like, not me though. I did like shut up. I am so serious.
I'm just like, sometimes you just are you adding anything to this conversation?
Right.
That's exactly.
There are times where I'm like, well, I actually want to boost this via comment, so I will leave heart emojis. Like literally, they don't need to hear anything I have to say. Nothing I have to say is important here.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll go into the comments and I will like if there is like an own voices.
Right. Yes. Like something that you agree with. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Opinion repositories. Yeah. This is also what group chats exist for. You know.
Exactly. Keep it in the group chat, my man.
It is just like. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many things. And you see people getting in hot water because they don't know when their opinion
isn't
not needed.
Yeah, it's not required as not wanted.
There are so many things. There was just the one Kendrick Lamar meme on Bookstagram where they were Live a Novel Life. They ended up deleting it without addressing any of the backlash, but
it just got deleted. We were talking that went up right before we did.
Yeah, that's how I found out about it because Izzy pointed it out. She was like, "Oh my god, I am in a live show with Bethany."
we did like patron sprints. Well, it didn't end up doing sprints. We just hung out and talked, but it was like me and Izzy and Ashley and Bree and Jess Owens.
Yeah.
And that had just come up, so we talked about it there.
God. It's just like, but that's the type of thing where literally, why did you do that in the first place? No one, you could have skipped this whole thing by just not doing that.
Yeah. Anti-sprints. Yeah. I should have known better. It's like if I'm gonna have Ashley on with me, we're just gonna watch. We're not gonna actually read.
Jess
Everyone's gonna
talks
be
all the
happy.
time about her being yapping instead of sprinting. You know, you should have seen this coming.
It was fine. Everyone had a great time. We just talked for like 3 hours. It was
Right. And that is the best, the
Yeah.
absolute best type of live show, in my opinion.
it was fun. I'm glad it's patron only though, because I think we were much more transparent than we normally would
Right,
be.
right.
Yeah.
As it should be though.
But it was fun.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. But there's just things like that all the time where it's like, you had no business. You didn't need to be in this hot water. You literally did like
But I
I
mean, let's
know-
be real. This is also why, you know, like I don't get the subscribers and views other people do
Right.
because I don't do this stuff.
Right. But also just like it's one of those things where I'm like, if you are even kind of knowledgeable
Mhm.
enough to say anything about this, you know, enough to know you shouldn't say,
Yeah.
say anything about
I mean, yeah, that's yeah.
and again, I'm like talking about like, you know, speaking of things that are not your lived experience at all whatsoever. Like if you
Well, and
the fact you said something proves you shouldn't have been the one saying anything.
the description or whatever, the cinnamon roll thing, I'm like, you got this from Threads because there were a ton of like Black creators on Threads that were like, oh, like I wish I had the level of pettiness that this cutie patootie has or whatever like that. And I was like, you were on Threads and you saw and you were like, I'm gonna put that. I was
Right.
like, why?
I
That was not.
Yeah, but also it's like he is not a cinnamon roll.
He's not a cinnamon roll.
He's cute, but he's not.
Yeah, but I'm like, that's where I was like, I can
Right,
guarantee
exactly.
this is where this came from.
I
is-
told Ray, I was like, yeah, she saw a few too many tweets about the jeans and was like, I can do something with this.
Exactly. I was like, that was exactly where my thought went too. Is I was like, everyone commenting that like his
missed
jeans.
the point.
Yeah.
You missed it. Literally so wrong. I can't even begin to tell you.
You should have seen my face because like I was on live when I actually because they were talking about it and I hadn't seen it, so I pulled it up on my computer and I was like,
yeah, Izzy sent it to me. That's why I ended up saying it. She was
And
like,
then I saw
what?
then I went to Instagram and Ray's story was the first one that popped up. And then I saw it on there and I was just like, oh my God. So then I had to go and read the comments.
Ashley's story.
Yeah.
But I
Ashley's
don't follow Live a Novel Life anymore and followed them a long time ago. And so I didn't know like
I didn't know either
we
until
were talking about.
Yeah. I had to go look it up.
The post. And I was like, oh. And then it was funny because I didn't even realize who posted it for a minute. Like I was just going through it and like, oh, this is bad. This is bad.
Yeah. It got worse.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, like, I don't know, like that's stuff for people who live there to speak on.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
None of my business.
And I think that's exactly it. Is like every single time I'm just like, oh, okay, well, like, even if I had an idea in my head of what I thought it was like,
inside
doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, okay, like clearly I'm wrong. Move on.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Why would I say anything?
Go in the comments of that creator and be like, oh, thank you so much for telling me this because I believe
Yeah. No one cares.
Drop a like and keep scrolling and think about it inside your mind only.
Like there's inside thoughts that do not need to be public. Jeez. But you know what? That's the thing though too, is I also like keep in mind is I'm like, you know what? Like I have to at the end of the day, I have to live with myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and like no amount of viralness or interaction or whatever is worth not being able to live with myself.
I just truly like I joke about this all the time. I truly don't think that my opinions are that interesting or that like important or that like often I'm just like, I don't who wants to listen to
Yeah.
any of my
Yeah.
thoughts. I don't care. I'm a rando from Wisconsin. Who cares?
Like, I have thoughts on a lot of stuff, but I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't
who
know.
needs to hear it other
As
than
we
me?
do, right?
I mean, some of it, but, like, it
Yeah.
anything that you hear about, that you know about, that comes into your consciousness,
Mhm.
because that's literally how
I
babies
play that
develop.
conversation out in the shower while I'm washing my hair. I play it all out in my head, and then it's over.
Yeah. Like, it is natural to see something and try to form an opinion about it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make your opinion correct, and it doesn't make your opinion needed,
Yeah.
especially, again, if it has not a single iota to do with you.
Right.
Exactly it. It's like, if it is something it is your lived experience, it is one thing. Like,
Right.
I will comment on something about chronic illness.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, yeah, that's my lived experience.
Right, yeah. Makes sense.
Reading a book about a deaf main character, I'm not gonna speak on the representation of that. I have no idea. My opinion is
Mhm.
irrelevant.
Right.
That's fair.
Exactly.
Yeah, or at the very least, with the caveat of, like, "It seemed good to me, but I don't
I have
know."
no idea. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I
Yeah,
didn't find anything in here obviously offensive.
right. But I coulda missed something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
man.
a fun balance
Yeah.
to keep, and we don't always get it right, but
No.
I think that's the
again,
other thing too, is then people, I was joking with Ray. I was like, you know that people get upset very easily. I'm like, and you're going to mess up. You're going to accidentally say something. You're going to
Sure.
post something. Just apologize.
Apologize
Like,
and then do better. Like, we've all
yeah.
messed up and done, like, you
Everyone has
know.
had to write an apology or speak an apology or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
I
it's
was wrong.
not
I
right. It's not the end of the world to admit that you were wrong about
Yeah.
something. It's really not.
Mm.
You can have a long booktube career and just say, "Yeah, I was
You
wrong about
can.
that.
That
I'm
was
sorry.
that was
Won't
not
be
right.
happening again."
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
done.
Yep.
And I think, honestly, truly, genuinely, that's all most people are asking for.
Mhm.
You're gonna have people who are never going to watch you ever again,
And
and
I
that
think that's
is
something
their
you
right,
have to accept. Is
their
like, yeah,
prerogative.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of people who just want you to acknowledge that that wasn't great. I won't be doing that again.
Mhm.
My bad. I
yeah,
see why that was a bad thing to say or do or
Mhm.
whatever.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Listen, too, not everything needs to be public. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Inside thoughts. Inside thoughts can be inside thoughts.
and, like, we're all going to mess up, but again, there are some missteps you just don't have to make.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's like you can also come back from it if you have, like, if you want,
Yes.
yeah.
you
And
know?
that's I think a good apology is a skill that just we
Yeah.
don't really have anymore. And this idea that, like, if you mess up and you hurt somebody,
Yeah.
they when you apologize, they do not owe you acceptance now.
Mhm.
They can still leave,
Yeah.
and that doesn't diminish your apology, it just means you've hurt somebody, and that's not a relationship that you have anymore.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we live in a very prejudiced society. We live in a very racist, homophobic, ableist
Yeah,
society. It is not surprising that you might have some less than stellar assumptions, beliefs, that have
Mhm.
been taught to you from your representation, from whatever you've seen.
Right.
So, again, like, it's it's not that everyone expects you to automatically know all of the things and to
Yeah.
have never gotten anything wrong. It's literally just, if you
Yeah.
mess up, how are you going to handle it?
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking
yeah,
for.
And sometimes it's like, if you get a comment on something that you immediately feel very defensive about,
Mhm.
take a beat before you respond.
Don't pretend.
Like,
I
don't respond
like,
impulsively.
yeah, I
Like,
messed up.
that's the biggest place where I've
Oh,
had
yeah,
to apologize for things is, like, that my initial reaction to criticism was to, like, be defensive about it,
yeah,
and then later was like, "Oh, okay, I
Right,
see the point."
yeah.
right.
And,
Exactly.
like, I messed up pronouns for an author in one of my videos that somebody had mentioned, and now every single time before I film my video,
Mhm,
I look up the author just to make sure. That can be the change that makes. It's just,
yeah,
"Okay, I messed up.
mhm,
What do I do
yeah,
moving forward?"
yeah,
It's like, "Okay, double check, write it
yeah,
down."
Right.
It
And
doesn't
then
have to be this big, like, blow up thing, like,
right, yeah,
right. Yeah, no. It's just growth.
yeah.
yeah.
And I think learning to recognize that, like, you a lot of times if you're feeling activated, it's because there's something there that you need to work through, and learning to, instead of, like, reacting, to just be
Yeah,
quiet and think for a while and,
yeah,
like,
Mhm.
ponder, like, "Why is this bothering me so
yeah,
much that someone just said this thing?" You know?
And that is exactly the time to keep your mouth shut.
Mhm.
If you can even just keep your mouth shut for 24 hours in
yeah.
that feeling, it
'Cause
will serve
usually that
you
feeling
well.
passes, because then you like you said, you sit with it and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I just feel offended because I didn't see myself that way,"
yeah,
and clearly some of that is still
right.
it's
No,
still in
yeah.
there.
I think it's been really helpful for me. There's like a couple of Black women I follow on TikTok who talk about race related stuff
Right.
and say stuff that when I first started watching them, I was like, oh my God, but I didn't comment or say anything
Right,
because I
exactly.
saw they would respond to people who were commenting to point out sort of like, here's what's going on. So I just like
Mhm,
kept my mouth shut. And after a while, I was like, okay, I get like
mhm.
I get what you're saying. Like I see, and it's helpful, like it's like, but it's like learning to be okay with sitting in discomfort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I think the thing that trips us up is our natural, desire that people see us as good people,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
We
to
don't
be
want
light.
anyone to feel
Yeah,
like we're not a good person.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's not that you're not a good person per se, sometimes it is, I mean, there are bad people,
Yeah.
but, sometimes it's literally just you don't you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know,
yep,
and you don't
Yeah.
know it because of your lived experience and the society that you live in,
yeah.
and
We
it's
live in a
something
society that has
yeah,
brainwashed us
yeah.
our entire lives.
Yeah.
If you are just being confronted with something at your current age, you were today years old when you learned,
Yeah.
that's not your fault. You
No.
didn't know what you didn't know, but
Mhm,
now how you handle it is
yeah,
completely up to you. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think for me at least, like the other thing about this is realizing that even if I have given time to something to think through it, I may still not land in the same place as somebody else, and to
right,
feel okay about that, and and like,
agreed.
I don't know, like being comfortable with the idea that there may be some people who think bad stuff about me,
yeah,
Mhm.
you know, and that's their right as long as I feel comfortable with
yeah.
where
Not
I'm at,
everyone's going to
you
like
know?
me, and as long as I am comfortable with the stuff that I am putting out there,
Mhm.
you don't have to like
You don't
me.
have to. And
Yeah,
you can, like, have different feelings about stuff than I do, and I can respect that and respect that that might color how you see me because of the lens you have on the world. The main thing I need to be sure of is,
yeah,
can I go to sleep at night? Like,
exactly. If
Mhm.
I am
I don't know.
comfortable with how I am interacting with the world, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm interacting with the world in a way that I'm proud of,
Mhm.
anyone else's perception, that's
Yeah.
I'm not gonna alter that.
Oh.
Like, it's like that's kind of what I mean, like, if you do hurt somebody's feelings and they say, "We're done," that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
everyone has a right to interact and be friends and hold community with whoever makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. We all want to be liked.
Yeah, but it's like you kinda gotta get past
Yeah,
it and realize that, like, you are just not gonna be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay.
yeah.
Like
And as long as I feel and you as a person feel comfortable with the way, just gotta
mhm,
Right. And the fact that everyone does that,
yeah,
and
mhm,
but also then you can't control the assumptions made about you because
yeah.
of what
yep,
you're comfortable with, what you
And
are,
that's
you know,
whenever you get
whatever you
those
call.
pride bully or whatever, because they posted their opinion, and it's like, you had the right to say that.
yeah,
I have the right to call you an idiot.
Right,
Like
right.
yeah.
I don't have to
And I
follow
mean,
you.
and that's the thing is it's like there's some stuff where we can like sort of agree to like I can agree to disagree and you might feel more strongly
Yeah,
about something that I just, I don't know.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
I think I struggled with that for a long time though, and I think it's partly my religious background because this feeling that like everything is black and white and like if
Mhm.
somebody thinks that I'm doing something wrong, then maybe I'm just not searching myself enough and like I am doing something wrong and like so it was like a long process to come to the point of being like sometimes I just don't agree that it's wrong.
I
Right,
also
That's
think
okay.
as women, we are taught often to placate and, like, be likable,
Yeah.
and so sometimes it's like, "Oh, this person doesn't like me.
Mm,
I have to prove to them that you know, I need to alter something to make sure that I am palatable to everybody."
right.
yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Anyway.
that's why you just have to, as far as, like, booktube goes and stuff, it really is just making what you wanna make, reading what you wanna read, supporting who you wanna support, and the
Mhm.
people who like that
Yeah.
will
Yeah,
like watching
Yeah.
your stuff,
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not all you can ask for.
Honestly, yeah.
yeah,
That's the most you can do.
Yeah, and I look at it's like sometimes I look at, like, people who have been, like, wildly successful who started around the same time as I did, I'm like, "I could be" and then I think about, like, what I would have had to do to be where they are, and I'm like, "No,
just
Right.
kidding.
it's
Okay.
not."
Exactly. Like, and I like making controversial videos. I have no problem being like, "Hey, this is my opinion,"
Yeah,
and then if people are, like, going out of their way to disagree in my comments, I don't care all that much because I would never do that. So I'm like, "Alright, well, we already, don't value the same things because
yeah,
I would not be leaving this comment in the first place."
yeah,
Mhm.
But I don't want to. I like making them. I don't wanna do that every week. I don't wanna grow my channel on that
No,
at
and I
all.
and
No.
I also don't want to, like, flatten my opinions and my content to the point that I am palatable to everybody.
Correct,
And I
exactly,
feel like
yeah,
those are the 2 paths that I see people
yep,
take who are, like, very
correct.
successful, and
yeah,
I don't wanna do either of those things, so I'm
Exactly,
like, "Well, this is where we are." We're
yeah,
just
exactly.
yeah.
yeah,
I could have talked about romance books, perhaps even the exact same romance books, perhaps not,
Mhm.
and not made such a point about all the things that I make points about, and I think that I would have grown more, and I think that I could make a controversial video every single week and have grown more, and
yeah.
I like what I'm doing, so that's what I'm gonna do.
I also think it's important to sit in that space because I think the more people that do it,
Mhm.
the more acceptable it becomes, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, instead of everyone altering it to one of these 2 things, it's like the more people that are like, "No, I read to the world," you know, like,
like, I
it
thought
becomes
this honestly I did not leave a hateful comment, obviously, because I first of all, never do that. Second of all, I'm never going to do that on, like, a Black woman's, TikTok or something, like,
No.
not gonna do that. But I saw this TikTok video that was like, "I'm bringing diversity to BookTube."
oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah, I saw
I remember that, yeah.
I
Yeah,
There
I
was
saw other Black
sure,
women
I
comment
was
on
like, there were plenty of
sure.
people
there were
that
plenty
shared
of
that.
other people whose voices mattered in this space that
Yeah.
commented.
Oh, did you guys see it
I
too?
I'm not on
Or
TikTok,
no?
but I
Oh,
saw
no.
on
Okay, yeah, no.
Threads, and a
I was
bunch of people
like,
post about
Oh,
it.
no, there were so many, like, Black women booktubers commenting
Oh,
all
yeah,
about
it
it.
so funny.
It
I
was
didn't see any of that. I'm not on Threads.
yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I should be for the entertainment factor, and sometimes I feel like I should not be for
I have to limit my time for
Yeah,
sure
I've been
because
limiting it too.
but
But
it
yeah, no,
is,
there were plenty of Black women talking about it,
well,
so
I was like, if they see this, they're not
yeah,
gonna walk with
they
you.
saw
Let
it.
me tell you,
authors
they're
were
there.
going
They saw it.
authors were going off. They were like, "Are you kidding me? We've always been here."
Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I've seen a couple different TikToks, saying that in the last few years, and it's like or in the last few months, honestly, and it's like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but there's a lot of people that have
It's
been
always been and people have been around
making
for a
these videos
long
for years.
time doing
Yeah.
it, you know?
But
Years.
we talk
And
about this all the time. If just because your feed is a certain way,
That's a
doesn't
you
mean that
problem.
that's you problem. That's not depictive of the entire group.
No,
That's
right.
you. You
No.
have that. "Oh, I can't find Black books on Kindle Unlimited." That sounds like a you problem.
Right.
they're there.
They're on my recommend for you page.
Yep, yep.
It is like, listen, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Some days I'm like, all right, well, I'm doing TikTok today. Goodbye,
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
But sometimes not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just like I think if you're like, wait a second, even like I'm starting Romantasy-a-thon today.
Fun.
And romantasy is not the most diverse of the subgenres. It's not. But it is there. And I think if you can't find it again, that's like a chance for you to stop
Yeah.
and be like, okay, wait, do I believe that no BIPOC or queer author has ever written a romantasy? No, I
'Cause
don't
that
believe that.
is not the
So,
case.
Yeah.
so
That
I
would actually you know what? I need to
think
read more so that I can make a rec video because I know a few,
Yeah.
but I
yeah.
feel like because I know, like, Nisha Tooley
Love her books.
and then, the what is it? Something what's that?
Lore of the Wilds.
Lore of the Wilds,
Mhm.
which was
Fine.
mixed.
Elizabeth
But
Elizabeth
but, you know,
Stevens,
it's there, but it's like,
yeah,
you know, romantasy written by a Black
yeah,
author, so, like, I think there's probably more, so I need to find more
yeah.
'cause that would
Elizabeth
make a good rec
Stevens
video.
does, Omegaverse,
Okay.
sci-fi, and she's doing a superhero one.
Ooh, cool. Who?
Elizabeth Stevens.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
her books are too dark for me, though.
Her Omegaverse is very dark,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
But the superhero one is trade pubbed, and it's going to be like a superhero, like rom-com type of like light sci-fi sort of thing.
That's fun.
Well,
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of oh, it's snowing. Fun.
yeah.
I'm waiting for it.
Yeah. Um, I feel like I have a lot of, like, contemporary and historical romance
Yeah.
suggestions, but yeah,
Right.
romantic
Obviously, yeah,
But
there's
like you said, if you can't find it, it's not a you have to have that thought where it's like, this isn't because no one has ever read it
Mhm.
or written it. Like
right,
it's been written.
right.
It's just
Right.
whether or not
And there are definitely some subgenres that are
or less.
much
Yeah.
less
Oh
diverse.
yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And ultimately, I am trying to support it to become more diverse. That's
Mhm.
always true.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be supporting who
The people who are writing it, I'm gonna be reading their stuff, and I try to prioritize that, and I guess that's the thing, it's like, I don't know. I think also, though, people sometimes feel like it's like, like, these things are a zero-sum game, like, you can't
Yeah.
do both. You can't, like,
Mhm.
read the popular people and also read diversity.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. No, you
It's
can't.
whenever
Well,
I just read good
also
books. books. I just read whatever's good.
Okay.
I'm just like,
I mean,
wow.
I read good books too.
You heard that, right?
Not one for one what you're reading. Well, and even this, like you it doesn't have to be an automatic 5-star because it's a diverse book. And I think that's something that's people sometimes assume too, like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're only giving it a rating because of the representation. It's like, actually, I mean, I try not to go out of my way to trash books from any marginalized author.
Yeah.
But
I will more likely DNF it at this point. If I'm really hating it, I will just DNF it quietly and not talk about it. So, yeah.
Right.
I do that with a lot of indie books, though, in general, where it's like, if this was a self-pubbed book, I am way more likely to DNF it, not give it a rating, and move on with my life because it
you're
doesn't.
not bringing anything down.
Yeah. Whereas, like, if this is Emily Henry, she don't need my support.
Right.
I really didn't like the book. I can give it 1 star. That doesn't matter.
1 star, and that average is not moving. It's not.
It's like someone talked about with Colleen Hoover. They were like, your 1-star review does not impact Colleen Hoover. Get over it already. Like,
right.
I mean, honestly, yeah.
I mean, I also find it interesting that I've never read Colleen Hoover. Don't plan on it, obviously. But I do find it interesting when hating Colleen Hoover is a personality trait. And
I think about
I mean,
that.
I don't like her books. I read a couple of them, and I didn't like them, and I haven't read more.
Right.
That wasn't my thing. It's fine.
Well, and see, that's true too sometimes, right? And I think it's okay to be like, all right, I'm doing this project despite what it's going to do for my averages so maybe this is the baseline I'm starting at, and I would like to see this baseline move. I would like more of my own books to be diverse in the future.
Yeah. I mean, that takes time,
at the same time, gotta clear what I've currently have.
Right.
It happens to me with arcs too sometimes, where all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, I have 5 arcs for the month of whatever, and they're all straight white romances.
Yeah.
And it's like,
which is part of why, like, I try to be careful about, like, what all I request and stuff and add, but then, like, you know, the library exists to supplement things too.
Exactly.
But I think it's like, it's okay too that, you know.
And it does depend sometimes on your reading volume, right? If you're doing this and you're only reading, let's say you're reading under 5 books a month, it's gonna be hard to squeeze in other things. Whereas if you're doing a project and you're reading another 25 books that month that aren't even part of that project, it's a lot more easier to prioritize multiple things at the same time.
Right.
Because you have that volume.
Yeah. Yeah, Libby and KU being diverse. No, I think that's a good way to go, you know, like getting audiobooks or ebooks or, you know, graphic novels even or whatever. Like, I think there's a lot out there.
I also think it's all about patterns and stuff too. Like, you're gonna have some months or whatever where you fall into, oh, I'm binging this series, you know? And it's like, okay, well, I only read from 2 authors the whole month. And then, you know, in the next month, it's totally different. It's totally diverse. You read from 10 different authors.
Yeah.
So I think it ebbs and flows as your reading does. It's just whether or not is all of a sudden it's like, oh, this person, I'm scrolling their Instagram feed for their currently reads, and 9 months ago they read 1 book. You know?
Yeah, like that's exactly. It's like you can see when it's like they read one thing in Black History Month and that was it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Versus, oh, this person
or in 2020
this author, you know, and it's like, okay, they went on a binge for this random author and they read 12 books in a row by the same author. That wasn't a
right. I know, like currently I am, since October, right? I've been on like a sci-fi romance kick. And the majority of them, / all of them mostly, have not really been diverse in any meaningful way. But I am looking for diverse sci-fi romances. And additionally,
read in between are
Like, it will happen.
Yeah.
I will get there. I'm sure once I'm done, with these, the top of the Goodreads list
Yeah.
where, like, "All right, here's your
Oh,
recommendation."
you know who the series is by a Black author is the, like, I Married a Lizard Man, all of
Yeah,
Oh,
those.
Regina Black?
Regina.
Regina some Abel, I
No,
think?
Regina
Yeah,
Abel.
yeah,
Yeah, I was like,
Regina
Regina
Abel,
Black
that's
was
it.
the art
I was
that's
No,
here.
no, yeah, no, Regina Abel is Black.
I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
That was
like
like she sang that little, like, teen song. That was
What?
a throwback.
Oh, I don't know. No, but Regina Abel is a Black author, and she
Yeah,
does, like, sci-fi romance, so there are a few people doing it,
um
and then, like, Kimberly Lemming.
well, and that's the
Really loving
thing,
it.
right? I think because when I say sci-fi romance,
Totally enough,
I
it is an author.
don't mean
Apparently
alien
that author
romance.
does exist. Apparently I did not make that up. I was like, "No, this name is real." Oh,
Um,
this is why. I've seen this book everywhere. August Lane.
Oh. Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
just saw that on Christina C. Jones's, I think,
Okay,
Instagram.
so
Okay, so I did not make this up.
no, 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 actually, I think I read her first book, and it was really good, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Renee
Yeah.
Harper. Is it sci-fi romance though? And the issue is, which it looks like it is, yes. The issue for me is because I'm
Mhm.
not looking for alien romance because I've read that for a long time. Not that I'm not looking for any, but like that's not
Yeah,
specifically what I'm into right now. I don't like AI or robots or anything like that. That like really creeps me out so
Okay.
bad.
fair.
I don't like, in general, I've never really gotten into sci-fi romance or sci-fi in general because, like, I much prefer a sword and a fantasy setting over a laser gun and a space setting. I just do.
You
But
know
I've been accidentally getting into, like, political sci-fi romance, I feel like, where it's, like, a lot of them playing the same things I like in
well, you know what's
romance.
technically sci-fi, but, like, kinda paranormal blend is the Changeling series by Nalini Singh.
Yeah, I don't
It
love
is a
that
good
one,
series.
though.
Oh,
It's
really? I love that series.
one of those ones where I'm like, "Yes, the books that I've read get high ratings. I acknowledge that it's good,
Mhm.
but I don't really like it as much."
Okay.
So funny. I do think that the spin-off I enjoy more than some of the original ones, but I think that's just because the original ones were written
It came out so long ago.
so long ago, in, like, the early 2000s or whatever, so it's like,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
that is a good
Interesting.
one, though.
Well, I probably should get off soon because my husband texted me and was like, "I thought
So
this
did
was gonna be,
mine.
like, an hour."
We can definitely love
I was
for
like, "Oh,
sure.
sorry." We were, like, just talking.
I love that, we could have been done in under time if we,
Just talked about the
really
book.
talked about the book, but no.
Yeah.
Hey, good
Hey.
We
news,
haven't
we
talked about the book
finished
in a
the book
long time.
in 1.5, so but we will get off now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and, like, one of my things with Side Changeling and other things like that is that I really don't like being inside the mind of the villain, like, the person who's
Oh.
actively like,
Mhm.
I don't like knowing how all of your plans are about to destroy my main character. I don't like it. It stresses me out. All of this stuff stresses
And
me
every book opens up with,
Fair.
like,
Right. Yeah, I'm like,
a bad thing.
Have you read Winter's Orbit?
No, but I should add it now that I am reading more sci-fi, I should
Because
add
that one
it.
has a
That's a
romance
really
in it.
good political sci-fi romance with, like, an
Yeah.
arranged political
Yeah.
marriage,
Well,
and
I've
it's
always
male-male. It's
known
really
about it. I think didn't you read The Ark?
yeah. It was,
Yeah,
like, one of my favorite things.
that's
Yeah.
that's, like, the first time I heard about it, and I actually put it
Yeah.
on my TBR way back then, never got to it,
Okay.
deleted it, as I do.
As Heather, she probably deleted it from her.
Ah,
I did, but that's my thing, right? If it's meant for me, it comes back to me.
true.
Actually, I probably put it on
Cynthia, it's called Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. It's really good. So it's a sci-fi romance with a political arranged marriage between two men, and then there's also a mystery plot element to it. And one of them is a widower,
Mhm.
and but had like kind of an abusive previous relationship and is dealing with that. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's really good.
I should read it, and I will, probably. All right, Supreme Peoples, thank you so much for hanging out, and thanks so much for if you read the series, talked about the series. I had a great time,
Yeah,
and
this is so fun.
this was fun. So,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you, everybody. Bye.